Paul will kick it off with some Zoom etiquette, and then we'll go on to Shivani, and Rob will be our keynote today.
All right, welcome everyone to our State of the Market with Rob Hichman from Progility, our partner for this evening. A couple of quick housekeeping items. If you've come to these, you've probably heard this script before, but first of all, this is being recorded for the benefit of our members who have, okay, it's already going. It's being recorded for the benefit of our membership and continuous improvement. And just to let you know, if you're a member of our local chapter, all these are available from the past year. So you could get about 12 hours of continuing education credit on our website if you haven't been to one of these before. So check those out. They're a great resource. Please mute your microphone to keep background noise to a minimum. We love to see your faces. However, be cognizant of your background. I have my son bombarding mine every moment or so. If you have any questions, this is key. Please send them either through the chat to everyone, or if you want to ask it more discreetly to myself. We are keeping a record of all the questions, and we will ask them at the end of the presentation once Rob is done. And then just as more PDU news, only registered members will receive the automated credit for this 1 hour technical learning session. If you signed up and you didn't use your PMI number, please send an email to Rocky, our assistant extraordinaire. You can send it to assistant@southfloridapmi.org, and we will put that in the chat for everyone so that if you did not sign up ahead of time, you can get credit for attending. And without further ado, I introduce you to Shivani, who will be more than happy to talk about our 35th anniversary birthday.
Thank you very much, Paul. I would like to start this session with two things. First, welcome you all for joining us today. And second, thank you very much, programs team. We'll do it again, but I want to express my gratitude for Sue, Paul, Abigail, all the team members of programs team who are helping us out to put together this series of tool sessions for the chapter for our members. A quick update on a couple of initiatives that we will have in very near future. PMI South Florida is working on constituting a Toastmasters Club. And to understand your needs better, we have put together a survey and it's out. Please check your emails and let us know what you think about this initiative so that we can cater to your needs, we can make adjustments as per your requirements and to serve you better. Second update, we will have our newsletter published on our website and being shared with you guys on your emails early next week. Let us know how do you feel about it. If you want to publish some articles or contribute in some way, feel free to reach out to the chapter on our support email. As Paul just mentioned, this year is a very special year, and it's an year of our 35th anniversary. We will have series of events, and one additional event for tools we will have on 22nd of April. And also we'll kick off our events for a celebration of 35th year anniversary on 29th of April. Though all these events are a mark of celebration, but a special inaugural event. Right now, everything is virtual. Vaccination, it's, I would say, getting speeded up for many of us, and we are getting vaccinated. Very hopeful that we will have in-person events soon. But your chapter, we at PMI South Florida, have started working on one of the initiatives, which is a hybrid event in very near future in the month of June. So hopefully we will be able to see each other. It will be an event organized in a hybrid fashion, and you will get more updates as we move on. Now, today's session. The presenter, the speaker for today's session, I want to welcome you, Rob Hichman. He's a partner at Progility and has been in the project management tool space for over 20 years. Rob has been working with large enterprises across industry and the public sector for evaluation, selection, implementation, and for driving adoption and change via automating PPM processes. At Progility, Rob leads their business development and client relations team based in South Florida, working closely with clients and Microsoft to drive success. Rob, we welcome you in today's session and all. I'm very sure this is going to be a very interesting session and we'll learn a lot. Thank you very much. Over to you, Rob.
Thank you. And just shows how long I've been in the space. So fortunately, unfortunately, still here working out of Palm Beach County. So it's nice to meet everybody if we haven't met before. Can you all see my screen? Sharing it right now? No, you cannot see it. You will see it in about 10 seconds. Here it is. Okay. So I said 10 seconds and tell me when we're there. We're good. So,
Yeah.
Awesome. So today we're going to talk a little bit about and share just some background and experience on how we see the state of the project management tools market. There's been a lot of change in that market over the last couple of years. So what we wanted to do is just walk through our agenda here. I'll give a quick introduction. I think I already introduced myself. We'll talk a little bit about what the project management tool space looks like today and define what is a project management tool, because that's actually been changing over the last 5 or 6 years. We'll talk about some of the trends that are driving the market forward right now, so you get some background in that. Talk about where we are today, and also, obviously the impact COVID has had on all of us. It's also had an impact on this marketplace specifically. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Point to some of the key players technology-wise that are in the marketplace, and also give you some tools to talk about, how do I prepare to act in this space, given where you are as a project manager. Maybe you're in a PMO, maybe you're involved in enterprise governance. There's some questions you want to start asking and planning you want to do. We'll try to get you those questions, and then at the end, we'll have some time for question and answer. So hopefully this is a good session for everybody. As Anjali mentioned, my name is Rob Hichman. I'm a partner here at Progility. We've been implementing Microsoft-based project and portfolio management solutions. The company I'm with is a partner for the past 16 years, but I've been in this space for about 7 or 8 years before that. Spent some time at a global consultancy, actually working in enterprise PMOs, selecting and rolling these tools out. Worked at Microsoft for about 3.5 years, and then ended up at Progility as one of the founders. So if you do want to get in touch, my contact information is here. But let's talk a little bit about the tools. So, what do we consider to be a project management tool? The traditional concept of what a project management tool is really focuses on a couple of core concepts. First one is a tool that manages enterprise schedules, something that project managers are going to use on a day-to-day basis to build a schedule, build a work breakdown structure, assign resources, track work. And it really has to do with tracking these different components in a centralized system. Most enterprise project management tools also give you the ability to collect time, so the team members can share updates on their time in a timesheet. They also historically allowed you to report on different kinds of data, whether it's on projects, whether it's on resources, whether it's on tasks, whether it's on different metadata on assignments and things like that. These are all traditional components of a traditional project management tool. And you're also going to use it to organize your project artifacts in one place, your deliverables, anything related to that project is all traditionally stored in a project management tool. It has emerged also as a tool to help manage portfolios, the ability to aggregate and roll up information across projects, across programs into portfolios. And a lot of organizations use a traditional project management tool to drive process automation, whether it's in scheduling, whether it's in governance, whether it's in workflow, whether it's in intake and demand management, really across that entire program and portfolio management lifecycle. I'm the first one to tell you that this has actually been changing over the last 5 or 10 years for multiple reasons. And there's really been some trends that have emerged over this period that have led to this. So the first one which happened really in the 80s and 90s, was really the history of enterprise project management systems was all about centralized scheduling, your Gantt charts, your PERT charts, building enterprise network diagrams, having a central place to store all that information. In the 90s and early 2000s, that's when we moved to more enterprise-based scheduling. You had base levels of collaboration in these tools. You had your first enterprise database-driven applications. Tools like Primavera came to market. Artemis had been in the market for 8 or 10 years. Niku was out there. They were bought by Clarity. PlanView was out there as an enterprise system. Microsoft entered the space in about 2001. And there were also some initial swags at the portfolio management space, more top-down strategic planning around enterprise portfolios, tools like Pacific Edge, if anybody remembers them, tools like UMT, they were all out there. That was really the history behind the space. That officially in the early to mid 2000s became enterprise project management. And all of this history starts to inform where we, not only where we are, but where we're going. We also started to see the integration of different collaboration technologies, web-based collaboration technologies, portals, to have end users come into a web interface to update their status, store documentation, track issues and risks, the traditional RAID cycle. And we also saw the maturing of portfolio management. These initial tools became more and more robust. And then EPM, or Enterprise Project Management, as we know it today, really became a mainstream concept in between 2007 and 2010. Moving on from there, really in the last 5 or 10 years, this has merged from EPM to PPM, and that's Project Portfolio Management. This is the industry term. Also, we've seen the first wave of Agile tools starting to come to market. Agile really becoming a centralized methodology, with the manifesto in the late 90s, early 2000s. Tools started to emerge around 2010, 11, 12. Tools like Jira came to market, version 1 and Rally. We also started to see portfolio management becoming much more mainstream, but it also switched over about 2 years ago. The concept moved from portfolio management into much more strategic enterprise initiative management. So it became more enterprise level, and talked about moving from PMOs to strategic or strategy realization offices. And then we also started to see some consolidation across the industry of these tools. So, really some important changes that happened over the last couple of years, really in the early to mid 2010s. The first of those is Agile, and everybody's familiar with what's happened to Agile, how that's really been changing the marketplace. It's become a much more mainstream methodology in IT development organizations. It's starting to push beyond IT into other parts of the business. So that change is really driving where a lot of these tools are going. The second one is millennials entering the workforce, and different expectations in terms of what they expect from their applications. And their expectation is much more about iPhone-related experiences. It's much more about turn it on, light it up, use it, learn from it, and iterate on that over time. So it's much more iterative, much more visual. It's not the build it and then get there. It's the I want something that gives me what I need now. The third bullet is a really, really important one that's going to really influence where these tools are going over the next 10 years. It's really the emergence of what we call work management tools. So if you think outside of the structured project management environment, you have a lot of unstructured work that goes on in an enterprise. It could be tasks, it could be emails, it could be communications. That whole life cycle is considered work management. And the work management space is 10 to 20 times the size of the project management space when we look at the tools. So this is where easy to use visual work management tools started to emerge for not only project managers, but people that weren't project managers that were still managing tasks and activities. Those were tools like Asana, tools like Basecamp, tools like Monday.com that have really emerged as light web-based tools where someone could pick it up, they could swipe a credit card, subscribe to that technology, start using it, and not worry about the whole IT backend of managing and deploying different enterprise tools. The fourth key change that was going on, and it's still happening today, is industry consolidation around these tools. So if you think about, tools that have brought together, Clarity was bought by Computer Associates about 15 years ago. They went out and bought Rally, an Agile tool, about 5 or 6 years ago. And that was then bought out by Broadcom, which is a hardware and chip manufacturer. PlanView bought up LeanKit, they bought up Clarizen, they bought up Project Place. They're trying to kind of own that middle to upper tier of the market. ChangePoint went out and bought Daptive, and they've had put together an integrated suite. And Oracle has basically been buying a lot of different tools as well. They bought ProSite in the early 2000s. Primavera they bought up as well, and they've been consolidating their whole story around project and portfolio management. So if you look at those key changes, that's where it's really driving the move of these tools and where they're going right now, and how a lot of these vendors are really emerging and how they're driving their strategies. So with that in mind, where's the tool market today? And if we look at what Gartner says, Gartner actually took the project portfolio management Magic Quadrant and they split it out into 2 different spaces now. They have one space that's called adaptive project management and reporting, which is much more about planning and execution of work. And then they've got another Magic Quadrant or a study they have for strategic portfolio management. And they literally separate these out as two different market spaces now. So if you're being asked by your management to get one tool that does everything, I'm going to tell you right now, that's going to be a challenge. And if you want to also incorporate work management tools into this, it's going to be another challenge. So if we look at, the adaptive project management and reporting side, it's really about supporting project management and work management tools in a single enterprise, understanding you're probably going to have different tools to support different audiences. There's not going to be, and Gartner will tell you, there's not going to be one tool that's going to support every need across an enterprise. And this is a lot different concept than you think about IT 15, 20 years ago. We're going to design one solution for everybody. It doesn't work that way anymore. So really what Gartner is also doing is they're separating out the delivery of work and the systems that manage that from the actual selection of the work on the right, which is all about making decisions on what investments you're going to be making. Gartner also talks about in that second big bullet down, the rejection of traditional project management tools and methods, saying they're not adaptive. Really, they're too locked into a traditional way to do things. We need to be a much more flexible, iterative, and adaptive, especially with Agile being a driving methodology. As a part of this, they're also pointing to the emergence of new vendors versus the traditional big guys in the market to support different use cases you might have in an enterprise. And this came from an April 2020 study from last year for adaptive project management reporting. So if you are interested, if your organization does have a subscription to Gartner, you can pull this one up. The second space on the right is more about enterprise decision making. So they talk about strategy realization offices or SROs, enterprise project management offices, and even PMOs using specific tools to support strategy execution management, which is often part of a broader enterprise initiative to drive strategic change across an organization. They talk about that being an evolving technology, that scaled Agile is a part of that from a strategic and a realization and driving perspective, but the execution of it, again, may happen on the left side. So really important here, again, there's a November Gartner Market Quadrant study that came out for strategy execution management. And a couple months ago, they just renamed it to SPMs, Strategic Portfolio Management. So, when you start thinking about this space, you want to start thinking about it really in two different buckets now. You start thinking about the needs and requirements. Do they fit into one, the other, or both that you might have in an enterprise? So the big question is, what does this all mean to us? As project managers, folks in a PMO, folks that are kind of running the business in any way. The reality is there's a really good chance you're going to have to help select and support different tools based on different audiences. There's not going to be one tool set that's going to meet everybody's needs. It doesn't exist today. So there's a really good chance you're going to have to plan for supporting multiple vendors in your environment to meet these kind of requirements. But there's a huge opportunity for all of us on the phone here today. Developing integration strategies and bringing together different disparate processes is a great opportunity for the PMO, because that's what really good PMOs do. They integrate process and tools and technology, and they drive metrics across the organization. So this is just about bringing together the strategy and the execution sides into a way that makes sense for the business and where you're headed. So there is a great opportunity here, even though it may seem like there's a lot of change going on. If you were involved in the tool selection process, you may be looking at tools you've never seen before, you've never heard before, that are kind of rising up through the web-based ranks, and that's completely normal, because a lot of those tools are bringing new concepts for work and new ideas to the table that traditional project management tools will not meet. And that's not just in the Agile, it may be in the waterfall, traditional, you may have hybrid methodologies. Some examples of that we're seeing in the market now: marketing project management. You wouldn't think that's a big area. Well, there's actually tools that are specifically designed to support a marketing lifecycle, which is more about workflow and document write-ups and different creative people working together and marking up different versions of a document versus a traditional project management lifecycle. That's an example of a use case you may be faced with where there are going to be specific tools that may be designed to meet that market need. We also find a lot of organizations do M&A projects, very large projects, but they're run differently than an IT project, or operations project management, which is, again, it has a different methodology, it has different players. People that traditionally aren't trained to do formal project management may be a part of these, and they may be asking you to help guide them along, understanding they may have a different process than what you have today. We find a lot of organizations are actually doing more formal facilities, management for when you're building or updating new buildings on a campus. As an example, facilities project management is becoming bigger. That's a different use case and may require a different set of tools. Construction project management, which has always been a big deal, obviously, when you're building a building or you're building a high rise, it's starting to split out into the kind of the owner and the operator side of it as well. And there's different tools for each of the sides. If I'm a big county government doing construction, there may be a different tool than the actual contractors that are actually doing the work. So they're going to be different tools based on the different use cases you have. And then, in any enterprise, most organizations are going through some kind of a digital transformation. That's a strategic play that has an execution side to it as well. It's really going to put you in a position to select tools that work together on the strategy and the actual execution side. So, when you start thinking about this, you want to start thinking in terms of the organization, the use cases, what's the right tool for the job? And it may be different or non-traditional players than you may have seen in the market before. So we just wanted to share this to educate you a little bit about kind of what we're seeing out there in the marketplace. So, from a planning perspective, how do you get started and how do you start planning for this as a project manager or someone at a PMO? The first thing we're going to tell you is to keep an open mind. Someone's going to bring a tool to the table that just may have a really silly name. People would say 5 years ago, they'd say Monday.com. That's a ridiculous name. What is that all about? Well, Monday.com now has over 20,000 customers in the United States and overseas. And tools you wouldn't have thought about that may have silly names, or they may be non-traditional in their approach to the market. A lot of them have modern concepts that are really being taken hold by people that are under 35 or 40. So you want to have an open mind to these kind of things, because parts of them may be a good fit, or they may just inform you on new ways that you can support the work and the requirements for work that you have in your enterprise. What we'd always tell you is with any solution, especially project management ones, focus on the business outcome of the group. A lot of people get tied up and really fall in love with the tool's functionality. They'll go to a website and go, this is the greatest thing ever, and I want that tool. Get back to the question of what outcomes are you looking for? What's the problem you're trying to solve, and what value are you looking for from a specific solution? If you can ask those questions and back it up and get those answers, you can start to define what the right tool for the job is based off specific requirements and needs they have. And it may already be a tool you have in-house, you just haven't thought about using it in a certain way. So maybe reusing existing tools you have, maybe tweaking them or changing them up. Driving from that, it may seem just blatantly obvious, but you definitely want to develop a set of requirements for the tool or tools you're looking to do and map different products to those tools. A lot of organizations, especially on the business side, just go out and buy a tool. They see a sexy demo, they buy a tool, and they have 200 people working in a tool, maybe on the marketing side, that may not be a really good fit for the business. It may not be secure. It may not guard your data in a certain way. It may not be scalable. And a lot of times, a lot of these vendors will get you in and then they'll triple their cost in year 2 or 3 once they have you, but not give you access to the data. So you really want to develop a set of functional and technical requirements, get that out to your vendors, and make sure you've really vetted them out in a solid way. One of the interesting things about Agile, we worked with a lot of organizations over the last 5 or 6 years that go out and they say, oh, we're Agile, we don't need a project management tool. Or they say, we're Agile, we're just going to choose our tool and move on and we'll start doing it. Just because you're Agile doesn't mean you need to go out and select a tool using an Agile methodology. So you don't need to just select it and iterate it over time. You should still go through a formal set of requirements and define what that tool is going to do for you, your Agile organization. How do you track user stories, and how do you track sprints, and what does a feature look like, and are the relationships between epics and projects and all of this stuff? That's important stuff to know, so you can see if the tool you're about to buy is going to map to that. And then also, can I get data out of that tool at an enterprise level so I can roll that up to use it to make business decisions? At the end of the day, the money belongs to the executives or the people running the business or your agency, and they want to know what you're spending, what they're going to get out of it, and when things are going to finish, even in an Agile world. And if you can't get those answers out of the tool or you don't have it set up, it's going to lead to failure. We always say you want to ask security-related questions. This is really, really important. It's becoming more important with all the hacks you read about out in the marketplace. Web-based tools that are young or standalone or out there or hosted somewhere, they come with risks that a lot of times can outweigh some of the benefits users are going to see. We work with a very, very large automaker, a German automaker, that had gone out and bought a web-based tool for their marketing group. And they didn't realize their data was not in a secure data center. It was actually overseas in a place that they hadn't validated they could keep their data in. And they had all of their marketing plans for the next 10 years of all their new vehicles in that system. That was a huge risk. And once IT got their hands on it, they realized and they cut that thing off. But that's why having a partnership with IT as well as the business is really, really important. A lot of business groups will skirt IT, go get a solution, and not ask these questions because they're not savvy enough around technology to do it. And then they come to a point where they get frustrated because IT takes something away. It's always better to be a lot more proactive about that process dig into the security, dig into the user access and the data access, and make sure you have a really good sense of where the organization is. So when you think about planning for, this new wave of where project management tools are going, your role in the selection and use process, really think about these things and keep them in mind. And finally, we always say, remember whose money it is. It may be great that users want a specific tool, but the users aren't paying for the tool. The company or the agency is the one laying out the cash for the tool that has to then support that tool internally with IT or operational staff. So as much as we want to be end user driven in everything we do, end users aren't writing checks, and end users can pick up and leave and go to another company tomorrow. So you want to think with the end user in mind, but at the same time, remember who's making the investment and the kind of information the enterprise needs out of the system. And even if you're looking at work management tools that are really designed for end users to collaborate together, the idea really is to make sure you don't have brain drain, that people, when they leave the organization, all of everything they've been working on is easily accessible, right? You have access to that information. It doesn't leave with them once they leave the organization. And while you're giving them easier tools to do their jobs and collaborate, because everybody's overwhelmed these days, you want to own that data. And that's a really, really important concept to have when you're starting to choose work and project management tools. And then we got COVID. Everything's going great, and then COVID hits, right? And here we are all working out of our homes. So what did COVID change as it relates to project management tools? Well, what we found in the last year, and it's kind of interesting, is actually our business has picked up dramatically. With everybody working remotely, being able to do enterprise portfolio management and project management and work management, it's become that much more important, right? To have that data, to have those tools, to have the technology in place, because you generally aren't getting together in a room and doing a status meeting. You're doing it remotely, and you need access to that data in some way. So it becomes even more important now that you have this. A really big battle has been going on over the last year, and obviously we're on Zoom right now. So, we certainly have opinions on who's winning and who's not. It really doesn't matter. But the key is Microsoft Teams is in a battle with Zoom for the market we're talking about right now, this person-to-person collaboration in a virtual way. This battle is very important because if you walk into a lot of large enterprises, they're already Microsoft shops. They've adopted Microsoft Office, they're moving to 365, they use Word and PowerPoint. It's kind of a core platform, right? Or they're on Google. But in the case of Microsoft shops, Microsoft's overall direction, to give you a little bit of an insight into this, they're really looking at Teams as the modern operating system. So if you think about kind of their big push was Windows over the last 20 years, Teams could potentially become the next Windows. Because everybody is working now in Teams, Teams could be really what drives enterprises forward to pick specific enterprise applications. And we're already seeing this over the last 6 months with healthcare organizations that moved to Teams in 3 weeks because they had to, so that practitioners and IT and patients could all collaborate together. They continue down that road. What's important about that is any applications you're going to be rolling out, they're probably going to have to be compliant with Teams in some way. So you may want to put Teams on your list of requirements if the organization you work in has gone to an all Teams approach, or if you're in Zoom, you have a little more flexibility there. But if you are in a Microsoft shop, which a lot of big organizations are, think of Teams as that kind of modern operating system. But what happens with Teams and Zoom and everything like that is you have data sprawl. If folks remember in the 90s, we had Lotus Notes and everybody went out and had the freedom to build applications and workflow. And that was really cool until you realized you had 3,000 Lotus Notes databases and applications out there you had no control or governance over. Right? In the early 2000s, the same thing happened with SharePoint. Everybody fell in love with SharePoint because I can make my own portal and collaborate. And then I go in and I look and I've got 4,000 sites and everybody's got something different. And then I have to upgrade. I have no idea how to do that. Teams has the same potential to create the same chaos, because you've got a lot of users in it and they're doing things in a very free-form way. It was rolled out very quickly and there's been very, very little governance. A lot of organizations we work with are now backing up and saying, well, maybe we need to put some governance and rules around what people can do in Teams. Otherwise, they're going to be doing all kinds of free love stuff. And then you've got this whole data sprawl challenge in Teams. So, COVID definitely created an environment to drive this data sprawl and drive a decision on what platform you're going to be using for collaboration. But again, one of the opportunities here for all of us on the phone is that as we start to move from that chaos of COVID to much better controls, we're starting to realize we do need project management tools. Project management is always in demand, no matter what you say about the marketplace and what people need. We're always going to have work in the space because people always need to plan and manage and execute their projects successfully. And so when you think about it, PM tools on the strategy side and the execution side, they really need to be in place for organizations to successfully plan and deliver projects, whatever methodology you're using. So, we always want to know what projects are out there and what are we working on. We always want to know what work is out there. We want to know how's the work going, obviously our status of our projects. We want to know what resources are critical to the delivery of those projects. That's a problem that hasn't gone away. And we also need to know how do we plan and reallocate our work and our money. Should something like COVID happen again? Should there be another mass chaos situation or a catastrophe where we need to back up, reassess, cut our budgets, and realign? Enterprise management always wants access to that data so they can make these decisions in real time. And we really have to help them put that structure around it using really good, solid project management fundamentals and systems that reflect those processes consistently. So COVID has definitely had an impact on where we are as a society, but also on the project management tools marketplace. So, who are the leaders right now? And this is not the according to Gartner, this is the according to Rob. So kind of breaking this out and who we see in the marketplace right now, starting with the adaptive project management reporting tools, there's certain players we're seeing that are still out there that are going pretty strongly right now. Obviously, Microsoft, a great platform play with Microsoft Project and the versions of that. They have a DevOps suite, Azure DevOps for your developer operations. They have Planner for lighter weight project management, task management. And then they own that platform in Teams, right? And that's going to be a big wedge Microsoft is going to use. And they're spending a lot of time and a lot of money really getting that out in the marketplace and making sure people are deploying it in a consistent way. Clarity is still out there as an enterprise portfolio management tool owned by Broadcom now. PlanView is still out there. As I mentioned, they're out of Austin, Texas. They've made several strategic acquisitions. They're playing in both the execution and the strategy space. Atlassian has become a huge player. If we sat down 10 years ago and we said the word Jira, no one would even know what that word meant. And here we are now, and I think they've got 20 million global users. It's something ridiculous like that between Jira and Confluence. They're definitely a big player in this space, mainly on the Agile side, but they're starting to kind of bleed over for business organizations to do more traditional collaboration. Asana is a big player, kind of in the lower to middle tier of the work management, crossing over into project management. That's one of the tools that's gone from a work management Kanban-esque kind of work management tool to now they're building project management into their capabilities. Clarizen, which was recently acquired by PlanView, as I mentioned, another enterprise player. Smartsheet has kind of snuck up on the market. They're really interesting because they started as a bunch of ex-Microsoft folks in Seattle that wanted to build a web-based spreadsheet and then allow people to build applications on top of that. And what they've really built is a huge user base of people that want to use a spreadsheet mentality, that love Excel, but want more power than Excel. And that's where they've entered the project management market, and they've been slowly adding functionality that's adding value. Reiki as some people call it, they were just recently bought by Citrix down in Miami. They're another tool, a lot like Asana, kind of an interesting buy for a platform like Citrix to buy a collaboration tool like Reiki, and then Workfront and Workday and those tools. So that's kind of on the adaptive project management side. Those are some of the key players we see out there today. You'll see though, there's not a lot of matching between that and the folks on the right. This is in Gartner's mind, this is a really strategic play. It's a new space that's been evolving. And some of these players like Decision Lens, Gensight, Triskel, UMT, they've been around for 10 or 15 years. They just haven't really gotten noticed because everybody's been focused on, let's get a single tool that does everything. And they kind of take whatever's in that tool. Now enterprises are breaking that out because they really want to separate out the strategic spend and the capitalization from the actual work getting done. And so these are some of the tools we see out in the marketplace today. Gensight, which is based in West Florida, they have a big play in healthcare. They actually come out with a healthcare space. Maven and On Strategy, Shibumi, who's based out west. Sophion, which is based, I think, in Minnesota. Transparent Choice, which is a company out of the UK. And as I mentioned, Triskel and UMT 360 is based on a Microsoft platform. They've been around for a bit as well. So, when you're thinking about who the market leaders are, you want to start with that list of requirements, understand your use cases and your users, understand the functionality and the outcomes you're looking for, and then start to choose the tools that are really the best fit for your organization. So, our goal today, and I just wanted to walk you through kind of our understanding of the market, where we see things going right now, who the key players are out there. At this point, we wanted to open the floor to questions. So I know we went through a lot in a short amount of time, but Paul, any questions out there in the Q&A?
Not at the moment. Let me look. I'm getting a lot of kudos to you, but
Thank you.
no questions at the moment. Have any questions from our audience? Where is the decision lens used?
Interesting question. The Decision Lens is a strategic portfolio management tool that's mainly used in the government. Their tool is built around what's called CIPIC, which is capital planning and investment control, which is the upfront portfolio management process that the federal government uses to justify the investments it's going to make. So their play is mainly in the federal government space. They have branched out a little bit into the commercial space, but we see them mainly in large government agencies. So that's where their experience is.
Okay, what are your thoughts on SPM from ChangePoint?
SDM. Tell me a little more information about that one.
Hopefully, Shavendra will give us a little more clarification there. Question on Smartsheet. Is the dashboarding standard? Are you familiar with that?
I don't know a lot about what's standard. I know they have different package levels. They've got an enterprise, they've got a standard and a pro. You just have to kind of look at, which package is the best fit for the organization. And I'm sure you can go to the website and get some of that information. Not exactly sure. So.
Okay. Eliana had a comment at her company. They're using Monday.com for project hours and phases, Teams for documents, and ServiceNow for IT tickets. So.
Like we said, more than one tool, right? And that's completely normal. So we didn't even talk about IT service management, which is kind of the front end help desk ticketing thing. And those guys tend to bleed over with project management modules as well. So there's definitely some crossover there too. So.
Let's see. Yes, the session will be available on the website. My good friend Sue is providing the link for everyone. Smartsheets, are they complete user-friendly out of the box? And kind of a question to everyone in the chat, if anyone is using it in South Florida. So if anybody's using Smartsheets, Ken is looking for companies and maybe some references and thoughts. And your thoughts, Rob?
We've run into a couple of organizations that are using it, a little bit in government, a little bit in commercial. We see it mainly in smaller organizations where they've got less than 50 or 100 folks. Once they get beyond that point, they tend to look for more process-centric applications because it's fairly basic and rudimentary. It's designed with really kind of end users going in and using it. So, our experience is it kind of tops out at a certain set of processes and users. Once a PMO matures to a certain point, it's kind of, they get beyond that, but love to hear the feedback from people who are using it on the line.
All right. SPM is the strategic portfolio management tool from ChangePoint, which integrates into some extent with Adaptive. I think that was a little bit more clarification on the previous question.
That would fall into ChangePoint, who bought Adaptive, and then SPM. Interesting. I don't have it here. I'm not sure. We could do a little bit of homework if you want to shoot over your email address. I'll point it off, bounce it off our team. So it's a good question.
What tool would you recommend for road mapping?
It depends on the kind of road mapping you're trying to do. So let's see if there's any comments in the window. It depends on your definition of road mapping and what you're trying to do. So lots of these tools can support road mapping. So it just depends on, is it strategy-based road mapping up front? Is it more execution road mapping? Is it all of that together?
Okay. Look for a little bit more information in the chat.
Yep.
They're coming in fast and furious now.
Right. Okay, we'll look at them.
And then, where do you see the future of the PPM tools as we transition back to hopefully non-COVID world? Is it going to keep expanding, or what do you see the new involvements?
I think it's going to keep expanding. I just think you're going to start to see the work management and project management worlds blending, where people are picking up tools like an Asana or a Basecamp versus formal project management tools. I think those worlds are going to start to come together a little bit, probably through acquisition. And, I think Microsoft is going to build a story there. They always do. It just takes them a little longer than everybody else because they have the underlying pieces and parts. But, I think through acquisition, we're going to see that continue. And it's going to become more and more important because if you look at it today, people are working from home. They're working more hours. They're expected to do more work and fewer resources. And that's always a challenge in the project and work management world. So the market is only expanding.
All right. Xavier is asking, what do you think of Trello as a Kanban tool?
It's a fine Kanban tool. It was actually designed just to do that. So Trello is a very nice little tool that's kind of in that work management space, right? Where you want to share tasks and activities with people in a visual way. But yeah, Trello is kind of in that same category. So I think they were bought by somebody too. Yeah.
Okay. All right. We have a comment. Tools come and go from Jean-Luc. How much time do you think is a good baseline to determine a specific tool will fit in for an organization?
When evaluating a history, I would look at 3 to 5 years of history of a tool, how long they've been around, do they have a proven customer base, what do they do to secure their data? I would look at that kind of a time frame. I mean, Gartner now isn't looking at anybody who hasn't been in the market at least 3 years with proven references. So I think 3 to 5 is probably realistic.
Clarification on the question earlier is more for the strategic space on where we're referencing
on road mapping.
On road mapping, yes. From a strategic standpoint.
So I mean, any of the tools on the right will do that kind of road mapping. They're really designed for that top level strategic planning and road mapping. Our experience, the ones we work with Triskel, which is a really good company. They have an office actually in Fort Lauderdale, and they do a really nice job. They're a bunch of guys who used to be at Artemis back in the 90s and early 2000s that decided to, when Artemis was kind of sunsetted, they went into the strategic space in about 2010. So they have a nice set of tools. It's very visual, web-based. UMT 360, if you're in the Microsoft world, it plugs directly into the project suite, which is really nice. We've seen Shibumi, and it's actually a really nice tool, as is Gensight. So those are the ones we have experience with. So.
Who are the losers, or who do you see not being able to keep up with the changes, new methodologies, market consolidation? Do you see a losing horse in that race?
I mean, the ones that are at risk are the big ones. If they don't grow or acquire, they will lose market share, and they're going to lose market share to all these newer companies you wouldn't have heard of 5 years ago. So, Microsoft's not going out of business. Oracle isn't going out of business, but I think the market share they have on their tools will stay stagnant while the other ones grow and grow and grow. And, I think you see like Trello, they got bought by Jira for $500 million. I mean, the opportunity is in that newer space to develop newer technologies. So I think it's just, it's an high opportunity space right now. So.
I don't know if you'll be able to answer this, but I think it comes down to a little bit of tailoring and deciding what you need. But what is the most cost-effective tool? And I know a lot of them, that's very individualistic to your company. That's a tough one.
Yeah, I hate to say
some of them are free at the very beginning. So, but do they do what you need them to do?
Yeah, the answer is it depends. It depends on your unique situation and the outcomes you're looking for. If you're going to spend money, what value you're going to get back for that, right? And sometimes spending more to get more value makes a lot of sense. So it's hard to say that, and free, you get what you pay for with free. I'll just tell you that, right? A free trial is great to give you a feeling for it, but you really want to do a proof of concept and get something tried out in your environment. And you're going to have to invest time and money along with a vendor to make that happen. So if you really do believe in one of these tools, go into it and get them to put some skin in the game, but understand you need to do the same thing. Free trials, we find we get requests from all the time on the Microsoft stuff. Nobody spends any time on it. So it's a waste of time. And by spending time and money on it, it shows you're actually dedicated and you're serious about it. So that's how you can really engage a vendor if you really want to, if you're thinking about buying something.
comment, Smartsheets bought 10,000 feet for resource management, and they're integrating it. You have any comment on that?
Well, that's one of the gaps in the non-project management tools, right? If you look at Asana, Smartsheet, Reich, they don't have resource management engines. They're not designed for that. They're designed for work execution and work management. The project management tools were designed around that traditional concept of projects and resources and tasks and assignments. So they're kind of working their way into that space. Whether they go there fully or not, it just depends on if they have to or if they need to. I would assume some of them will get acquired by tools that already have that functionality. But building a resource engine is a pretty big lift. It's not an easy thing to do. So that's probably why you don't see it there yet, but it may be on the roadmap.
All right. And then asking on that kind of intermediary step, a tool for program management. Do you have any recommendations there?
I mean, any of the enterprise, the traditional project management tools will be able to do program management. So your Microsofts, your Clarities, your plan views, change, but they're all designed to support projects, programs, portfolios, and initiatives. They all can kind of roll up and down to that. You should be in pretty good shape with any of those guys. When you look at the lower end guys, they're more work management. They don't really have a concept of a program. They lightly have a concept of a project. So.
Let's see. All right. For everyone that's keeping track of the chat, Tina posted the past webinars and the Smartsheet webinars. So you can go and find that if you're wanting to find out more. And this presentation will also be available on our southfloridapmi.org. Got some more kudos for you, especially when it came to the free comment.
Free ain't free. It never is, right?
Yeah, I think there's a commercial right now. Free.
free, right?
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to tools, you get what you pay for every time. So.
Okay, we got a nice little conversation. Dr. Calvin is asking about, he said he learned about Primavera several years ago. Were they acquired? I want to know kind of a status update on that.
Yeah, they were bought. Joel Koppelman, who ran the company and started it, he sold them to Oracle. I think it was around 2011 or 2012. So Oracle owns Primavera now, and the last version they released before they were bought was P6, and they're still on P6. So that's used mainly in construction and engineering, but they're still out there as an Oracle brand.
All right. Another system, is Artemis still in use?
It may still be in use. It's definitely not a company anymore. So they were bought. I think they were bought in the late 90s, and then they kind of rode it for about 8 or 10 years. And now most of the key people there left. They either went over to Triskel to start that company. Bunch went to Microsoft, other folks went over to Oracle. So it's just Artemis, we don't see them around much. I mean, if anybody has it, I think the last version was in like 95 or 96. So it would be a really, really old technology.
All right. Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate it. That looks like the last question for now.
Great.
Thank you for the time. I found it very informative, and it's amazing how it's changed even for me in the last couple of years, because we did enterprise level research project to find a solution. We went with Clarity, and then it was with Royal Caribbean, and so that kind of got brakes pumped hard, and it looks like we're going to have to open up the search from the beginning again, given that how things are changing so quickly. But we appreciate it. And thank you for your time. And then I'll pass it to Sue. I'm sure she has a couple other comments.
Great. And anybody wants to ever talk about this stuff, my contact information is here on the screen, and you have it in the deck as well. So just down here in South Florida as part of the community. So thank you.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. I think just the sheer number of questions tells me that a lot of people really got some valuable information out of this.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it. We're going to be closing up the meeting now. So if you guys have any, I see there's a couple chats going back and forth. So if you want to continue talking, you'll have to reach out via Indeed or, not Indeed, LinkedIn. So
Just wanted to mention, next month, we have another PM tool session. It is Miro, a visual collaboration tool. And then, as Shivani mentioned, we will have our first of several 35th anniversary celebrations on April 29th. It will be a virtual celebration. Some of the others will be in person, but this will be our first, and it is virtual. It will be a lot of fun. So I hope you guys can join us for both. And lastly, sorry about that. Thank you, Rob. Thank you so much. Excellent presentation. Tons and tons of information. A lot of really cool tools out there for us to consider. And thank you, PMIers, for joining us tonight via Zoom. I hope everyone has a terrific evening. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.